Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I see a lot of you are popping in right now. We're going to give it just a couple minutes for people to filter in, and then we will go ahead and kick things off. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm David Falwell. I'm the founder of Staffing Referrals, the partner at Staffing Hub, and the host of the Staffing Show. And I'm joined today by Krista Garver.
Hi, everyone. I'm a managing editor at Staffing Hub.
Super excited to have all of you here. Before we jump in, a couple housekeeping items to keep in mind. Number one, there will be a recording of this webinar. So if you happen to miss anything, or simply want to share it with your colleagues, you'll be able to do that. We'll be sending out the recording sometime in the next week. Two, if you have any questions or comments, please drop those into chat. We will be addressing those questions at the end, and if we're not able to get to all of them, we will reach out to you individually after the webinar. And three, thank you all so much for joining us today. I know we all have hectic schedules, and we just appreciate all of you being here and having the opportunity to chat about the state of the staffing industry. So first of all, want to say thank you again to our sponsors, Able, Avionté, Crelate, Staffing Referrals, and WorkN. We appreciate you very much. Now jumping into the agenda. So today we're going to be talking about the current job situation, then talking a little bit about the state of staffing overview and digging into the challenges and opportunities, followed by the digital transformation, and lastly, just a few slides on some resources and advice for newer agencies. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Krista to kick it off with the current job situation.
All right, so we wanted to start by giving a brief update on the current job situation. As you all know, the employment landscape has been changing very rapidly, and hopefully this will provide some additional context for the rest of the data we present today. So in the latest jobs report, which just came out a couple of days ago, there were 850,000 new jobs added in June. That was higher than expected and is also the largest jump we've had since last August. It's still 6.8 million jobs fewer than before the pandemic, but increasing rapidly. Wages also increased for the third month in a row, showing that workers right now really have bargaining power, and employers are having to take extra steps to attract and retain them. The unemployment rate is currently sitting at 5.9%. This is higher than it was before the pandemic. It's roughly equivalent to what it was in 2014. And a brief quote from Becky Frankowitz, who's the president of Manpower Group North America. Today, there are more job openings than before the pandemic and fewer people in the labor force. The single defining challenge for employers is enticing American workers back to the workforce. So in about the same time as the jobs survey came out, there was also an Indeed job seeker survey. And what they found was really there's a mismatch in urgency between employers and workers. Right now, I'm sure that none of you are surprised that employers want to hire people ASAP, but workers just simply aren't in the same kind of hurry. As you can see here, most job seekers are currently passively searching, and that's because most people who are looking for a job actually already have a job, so they're happy to take things in a more relaxed pace. There's also a lack of urgency among the unemployed. As you can see here, this is driven by a variety of factors, including continuing COVID fears. People have an employed spouse, they have a financial cushion, so maybe they don't need to come back into the workforce right away. There are a lot of expectations surrounding what will happen now that states are ending the extra unemployment insurance payments, but these results from Indeed suggest it might not make people rush back to work as quickly as many perhaps expect it to. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the state of staffing report, starting with who took the survey and the 2021 staffing industry growth projections. So our survey responses were collected in March. In total, we had more than 200 staffing professionals who took the survey. We targeted decision makers, and as you can see here, most of the respondents were owners, managers, or C-level executives. Responders also came from all verticals, the top three being IT, industrial, and professional managerial. Companies of all sizes were also represented, but the majority, a little more than 70%, were firms with an annual revenue of up to $25 million. Overall, agencies are very optimistic about their growth this year. Almost 70% expect to grow by 11% or more. Of course, last year, most agencies didn't grow at all or grew very little. So some of this optimism is certainly to be expected as things return to normal. And this graph shows that many agencies are in fact feeling very optimistic. Specifically firms in the IT, professional managerial, healthcare, and industrial verticals expect very high levels of growth. More than half of the firms in all of these industries anticipate growing at least 51% in 2021. So our goal with the state of staffing, as we've released it over the past several years, is to compare the fast growth firms to slow growth firms, so we can identify how the fastest growing agencies are achieving their growth. For previous reports, we've used the prior year's revenue to divide firms into fast and slow growth categories. But since 2020 growth was so heavily impacted by the pandemic, we decided to shift our perspective this year. So what we did is we categorized firms based on their anticipated 2021 growth instead. So for this report, the data that we're going to be presenting, fast growth firms are those that expect to grow by 21% or more, and slow growth firms are those that expect to grow by less than 10%. As you can see, about 43% of our sample fell into the fast growth category, and about 29% fell into the slow growth category. So now I'll take a brief look at some of the top challenges and opportunities that the respondents identified. So finding qualified candidates has consistently been a top challenge, and it was again this year for both the fast and the slow growth agencies. Other top challenges for both groups include getting candidates to respond and getting candidates on the phone. In terms of differences between the groups, slow growth firms seem to struggle more with selecting the right sourcing channels, maintaining relationships with candidates, and meeting their diversity and inclusion initiatives. Later in the webinar, David will talk about some of the tools that are aimed specifically at solving some of these problems. And here are some of the specific challenges that respondents cited when we gave them the opportunity to just give an open-ended answer. Managing and retaining office culture is obviously a very hot topic right now, as employers are deciding whether and how to manage the increased desire for remote work. More remote work is also introducing more technology. David will talk more about the tools that high-tech firms are using. And of course, retaining top talent will continue to be a challenge, especially in the current market where there are a lot of jobs open and people have a lot of choices. Of course, challenges also provide opportunities. As you can see, the technology and automation are seen as major opportunities, as are leveraging more referrals and more remote talent, as well as upskilling the existing workforce. All right, I'm going to pass it over to David to talk about how fast growth firms are planning to tackle these challenges and take advantage of these opportunities to meet their growth goals.
Thank you so much, Krista. That was some great insights and great overview there. So now we're going to be jumping into the digital transformation. And first step is kind of taking a look at what's changed over the last year. A lot for all of us that are here, I know, but some key things that have changed in the staffing industry. Looking at 2020, the most valuable platform has shifted from Bullhorn to LinkedIn is now #1, and MS Teams is also on that list, which is not too much of a surprise if you think about the need to stay connected to your colleagues and your industry. LinkedIn and MS Teams both provide that opportunity. Additionally, the most valuable lead source, there's been some pretty major shifts going from LinkedIn, Referrals, and Indeed to Referrals, direct sourcing, and your database. And when I say your database, I'm talking about the ATS or current data that you have where you're keeping track of all of your candidates. Additionally, the ATS market share, Bullhorn remains the top, with Avionté moving into the second spot and Salesforce to #3. And then lastly, what I would suggest is the most important stat on this page is the use of marketing automation. Last year when we did this survey in 2020, we saw 46% of firms were using some form of automation. That has jumped to 69% of firms. And I would guess by next year this time that we're looking at 80% plus And it's something that I would keep in mind with how you're operating your business as more firms look at automating processes to improve productivity and the candidate experience. So next, looking at tech adoption and what that really means for staffing agencies. This was kind of a fun question this year as we asked people if they considered themselves to be an early adopter, if they thought that technology provided competitive advantage. And what we found is that the way that you look at technology and the way you perceive your business's approach to technology is actually correlated with your growth. If the fast growth staffing agencies are 2.7 times more likely to say their agency is leading the digital transformation, 40% more likely to say that recruiting automation will transform the industry, and 1.6 times more likely to be an early adopter. So something to think about when you're hiring new talent, building out your executive suite, or simply trying to build your culture, that your approach to technology matters and is correlated with your growth rate. Digging in a little bit on the technology adoption. So we've started tracking 4 different categories: texting software, chatbots, referral software, and online staffing. We think these are going to be important platforms for staffing agencies going forward. What we can see is that fast growth firms, about 53, almost 54%, are using texting software compared to 47% of slower growth firms. When you look at chatbots, as about dead even at about 23% of firms using this software. Referral software, we saw 16% of fast growth firms compared to 8% of slower growth firms. And then online staffing, 8% of firms said they were using it compared to the 2.7 of the slower growth agencies. Jumping into what the most valuable software platforms are. We talked a little bit about this on the opening slide, but here you kind of see the breakout that LinkedIn, Bullhorn, MS Teams, Indeed, and HubSpot top the list. And then on the other side of that, you're seeing DocuSign, Monday.com. What I will say is this was an open-ended question where people could type in whatever software or platform they would like. And what we've kind of the trend in it, which makes it's pretty common sense, is that people are typically saying it's a platform that helps them run their business or operate day to day, or it's something that helps them with sourcing new talent. We're kind of seeing those as the key items that end up being the most valuable software platforms. Additionally, looking at the most effective candidate sources, what we saw here is that referrals and direct sourcing in your database were the top 3 for the first time. And we really think this is tied to the fact that it's a crowded market. The war for talent is increasing more than ever. And staffing firms are looking at new ways to get talent, and they're looking at leveraging the databases that they have and the talent pool that they've built over the years of growing their business. Additionally, on the candidate source side of things, we wanted to dig in a little bit and get some more details on which candidate source is the highest quality, fastest to place, and most cost-effective lead to source. What came back was that referrals were number 1, followed by LinkedIn and Indeed. One thing to note is that LinkedIn was solid number 2 for the highest quality candidate, and Indeed was very close, was number 2 for the fastest interview to placement. Jumping over to the other side of your business, the top source for new clients, what we got back was that referrals, LinkedIn, cold outreach, and conferences and networking events topped the list. Our guess, or my best guess, is that conferences and networking events might move quite a bit up that list this year as real live events come back online. Additionally, jumping into the job board spend, something that was kind of interesting is that we saw that survey respondents expected an average increase of spend of 8.6% from 2020 to 2021. And the industry average spend per month was about $8,884. What you can see in the chart below is a little surprising for us to see that under 25 million, the average spend by agencies was $5.5 thousand. Compared to when you broke up above the 25 million mark, we saw a huge jump in spend up into the 23,000 mark. And then when you go above 100 million, that actually stayed pretty steady at about $24,000 per month. Additionally, if you're looking at how much should you be spending on technology, We did ask this question in the survey this year, and we found that staffing firms under 25 million are allocating almost 22% of their budget towards technology and software, and also that firms expect to spend 3% more on tech in 2021. One thing to note is that when you take a look at this and see the smallest firms spending the most, I think that makes sense based off of their revenues. And then also, if you're looking at benchmarking what you should spend, you can kind of see where you're at based off of these categories. Another question that we've been asking for, I think 6 years now, is about the lead response time. And the reason we ask about this is it really has a major impact on the candidate experience, and also we believe strongly on the growth rate of your business. There's a stat that's been around for quite a few years that if you respond to a lead within the first 5 minutes, you increase your placement or close rate by up to 8x. And additionally, it is just a better experience for any of you who have submitted a form or applied to anything online. One thing to note here is that there wasn't a huge difference between the slow growth and fast growth firms in terms of the time to respond. I also would add that over the years, the number of agencies that are showing up in this 1 to 5 minute response rate has changed quite a bit. And it's something that I think as an industry, we should strive for and move towards. Additionally, when you look at lead response times by company size, you can kind of see it varies quite a bit. Historically, the larger the company, frequently that was the slower the response time. That data did not come back this way. But in terms of benchmarking, you kind of see where you're at, and it's a metric that I would consider adding to your weekly meetings. Jumping a little bit to the recruiting automation tools, another question we've been asking for quite a few years, and is what recruiting automation tools do you use? HubSpot has, I believe, this is their 3rd year that they've held the top spot, followed by MailChimp, Salesforce, Sense, Staffing Referrals, Great Recruiters, and Herefish. What the trend that we're seeing with recruiting automation tools is all of these are seeing an uptick in usage and adoption. I think a few years ago, HubSpot was in the low teens, and now we're seeing it at about a quarter of the industry using HubSpot. Additionally, looking at the ATS market share, what you can see here is Bullhorn has remained the market leader with 35% of respondents saying that they use Bullhorn, followed closely by Avionté at 16% of the market, and then Salesforce and JobDiva and Zoho. When it comes to texting software, Textus has remained the market leader with over 28% of the market, but followed closely now by Sense, who ranks 2nd for texting software with 23% of the overall market. When it comes to referral software, Staffing Referrals hold 63% of the market. There's a new category that we'll be tracking going forward. Also note that the 2nd most common was actually proprietary software, or people building it out, trying to build it internally. In terms of what software plans agencies have for 2021, the top 3 most suggested platforms for implementation were Bullhorn, Herefish, and LinkedIn Recruiter. Jumping from this to the resources and advice for new agencies, I come from a digital marketing background and have a strong belief in the Net Promoter Score as a value add and something to use as a benchmark. And as a new agency, it's something that I would recommend that you find a tool and implement and track on an ongoing basis. I know there's a few platforms out there that are highly recommended. One thing to keep in note of is if you take a look, the fastest growing firms have an average Net Promoter Score of 65 compared to the industry average of 56, and slow growth firms sitting at 46. Additionally, for those of you on the call today, if you want to take a look at how you compare within your industry, you can see that we've broken out the Net Promoter Score by industry here on the right. And commercial, IT, and travel nursing, we're leading the pack, followed by, and then on the other side of that, sales, locum tenens, and other, we're kind of on the not so great end of that. That said, still sitting higher than what most industries are at. Additionally, if you're looking at what conferences to attend, our survey respondents put the number 1 was Staffing World, followed closely by Executive Forum as number 2. And additionally, the valuable publications and content, Staffing Industry Analysts and the American Staffing Association were the top 2 publications for finding valuable content. Lastly, looking at advice for new agency owners, we ask open-ended questions like this every year and read through every single response and always have some great feedback on how things are going and what people should do or change. A couple that I thought were especially valuable were, 1, being genuine, being authentic. Your personality is your silver bullet. Getting automated very quickly, embracing new technology, and caring about people at all levels. I think that the staffing industry, we always say it's a people business, and I know that the best agencies and the best owners that I talk to that are succeeding are always very kind and authentic and open, and also looking at what's next and how to do better in the world. So we've actually went through the slides a little bit quicker than anticipated, so you're all going to get quite a bit of time back today. But if there are any questions, please drop those into the chat and we will go ahead and answer those. And we will also get you a recording of this very short webinar for you to take a look at. And we hope that this was super valuable for you. It looks like we might have some questions coming in here, so just give us 1 second to pull those up. Oh, actually, I think either I need to work on my Zoom skills or I don't see it. I saw a raised hand.
I saw a raised hand as well, but I didn't see a question.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining today. I hope you enjoyed the extra 30 minutes to get back for your lunchtime. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.